Okay, I'm going to demonstrate how I make coffee on my Pavoni, since developing your technique is a pretty important part, and so I encourage everybody to come up with the method that they like the most that creates coffee that they really enjoy. Let me just say a little bit about the equipment I'm using. I have a Millennium edition Europicola Pavoni. This is the one that has the smaller tank. I have a Rancilio Rocky grinder, which I've been really pleased with. It's doserless. I have a tamper, which was custom made by, I think, Espresso Parts Northwest, since the diameter of my portafilter basket is smaller than what's traditionally used. And my knock box is it's the Grindenstein from a industrial design company in Australia called Dream Farm. They have some pretty cool products that they sell. So let me get started. I'm going to try to comment on as many steps as I can, since it may seem like little things I do are a little bit odd, or that I'm just doing it for the hell of it, but there's usually some kind of intent behind it. There are two things that I try to keep in mind through every step of making the espresso, and that is the consistency and the arrangement of the actual coffee particles inside the filter when the espresso is made, and then the actual chemical process that's taking place inside the coffee when it comes into contact with really hot water under pressure. So the first thing you want to do is make sure everything is preheated. Pavoni's, the first shot is almost always the worst, and my belief is that things are not preheated properly. So the first thing I do is get the water in my sink hot, because if you use water for any step in making espresso, which you will, especially if you're making multiple shots, then you want to be using hot water so that it doesn't cool down any parts of your that you make espresso with. You also want to preheat your portafilter and your cup, which I do by putting in. Oh wait, before I put that in, I almost forgot. I empty out a small amount of coffee from my previous shot for two reasons. For one, it's been sitting there in the chute oxidizing, and I have probably adjusted my grind at some point, and that also removes any coffee particles that are going to be a different size than the ones that are going to end up in this shot. Because you want every coffee particle to be as identical as possible, and if you change your grind and have coffee from one grind and coffee from another, then you may end up with less than perfect results. So let me preheat this. I just put it in, put my cup under, and then I just slowly let water trickle out. So I don't want to blast water out because it can make a mess, and I don't want to waste too much water, since it's always a pain to wait for this machine to cool down before you can add more water to it. So this preheats the portafilter and the group head assembly. It also preheats my cup, and the third thing this does is it cleans any coffee residue which has built up on the shower head, which is just immediately under here. You can see some of the stuff that it removes out. I just wipe this out with my rag. I keep a rag sort of tucked into my waistline because I'm constantly wiping things down so that they're dry and clean. So once that's done, make sure it's dry. Put your coffee in here. My technique for filling this, it's probably a little bit strange. I spin it around while the coffee's coming in so that the coffee particles are more elongated and horizontal. I'm not actually sure if that's happening, but in my mind it is. And the more horizontal and elongated your coffee particles are, the better exposure they're going to have to the water as it's penetrating through the coffee. So you want to make sure you've got fresh coffee, freshly roasted and properly blended. And I fill it up, not all the way. I tap it down, and yes, this is a messy process. Knock that down, it sort of helps compact it a little. And then I top it off. I do not tap it down this time because the tamper makes contact with the coffee on the top of your portafilter, so it's my belief that the coffee on top gets packed down slightly more the further away, or the coffee on top gets packed down more than the coffee on the bottom. So that's why I tap that part. Then you want to make a nice flat surface without pushing down at all. And the reason I'm turning my hand up almost vertically is because if I don't, the little skin fat bubbles on the edge of my finger will actually leave an indentation on the surface of the coffee, which you don't want. Any downward pressure on the coffee, you want that to come just from your tamper. So the first thing I do with the tamper is I make sure it's almost completely vertical, and then I just set it down on top of the coffee and make sure that it's flat, lift it back up, tap it to knock off any coffee residue on the side of the portafilter, and then you do your actual tamp, which I try to keep at about 30 pounds. I used to grind finer and tamp harder, but the results were just a little too inconsistent. So you spin it to give it a nice polished look on the top, and blow off the remaining coffee. Probably wouldn't do that in a coffee shop. You don't want anybody's breath on it. And then put it in here. Whoa. Empty out the water that's been heating up the cup. Dry out the cup so that you don't dilute any coffee that drips into it. Cup in place. Make sure everything's lined up. And lift up on the handle slowly. Now total time, you want to be less than 30 seconds from when you pull this coffee down. I usually hold up the handle for about 10 seconds, and depending on how it's ground, you will not see any coffee drip out until you start to push down. Now not much liquid comes out on my machine, so I actually do this twice. And as long as both are completed within 30 seconds, then it should be good to go. And then just as the crema starts to become a light color, I pull it out, let the coaster catch all the mess, and then I stir it up, because the reason I stir it up, well, for one thing, it makes the crema have a really nice design in it. I don't know if you can see this very well. The second thing stirring does is it mixes the coffee in there, since the coffee that the first few drops that come out tend to be heavier and denser as they contain the majority of the flavor oils, and so they'll tend to settle on the bottom of the cup. You want to stir it up before you drink it, but don't wait too long because the crema will start to disappear. And that's it. That's my shot. I've already had several tonight, so I'm probably not going to have this one just yet. Actually, I will before. Can't waste a good shot of espresso now, can we? Mighty fine. So then, to take everything down, pull out your portafilter. If you have a knock box, that's great. If not, I didn't for many months. I got really annoyed with not having one. Knock it out. Rinse this. Dry everything.